The snow had softened everything except the ache in my chest. I stood on the familiar porch of the Davenport house, my boots crunching softly against the salted concrete. The white lights wound tightly around the eaves, blinked with practiced precision, the same way Serena had always done, everything orderly, flawless, untouchable. My fingers curled around the handles of two carefully wrapped gift bags. A box of handmade wooden toys for Miles. A silk scarf I'd found at a boutique in Beacon Hill that reminded me of the way Serena used to wear her hair in college. I had even brought peppermint bark, her favorite, though she hadn't mentioned it in years. I rang the doorbell once, adjusting the scarf around my neck. My breath bloomed in small clouds before me. Through the frosted glass, warm light spilled outward. I saw shadows, moving laughter trailing just beyond the seams of the door. Then the door opened. Serena stood in the frame wearing a forest green dress that shimmered faintly under the porch light. Her face didn't change when she saw me. No smile. No flicker of surprise. Her eyes, once so soft when she was a little girl curled against my shoulder, were like winter glass. "We don't want you here," she said. Her voice was low, almost bored. "Go ruin someone else's holiday." My heart clenched so sharply I thought it had stopped. I glanced past her. Inside the table was full. Candlelight glowed against polished silver. Graham was carving a roast. Evelyn was pouring wine. Miles sat by the window, his small hands cupping something round, maybe one of the snow globes I used to collect. No one looked toward the door. No one asked who had come. I swallowed, the taste of salt and metal thick on my tongue. "Got it?" I whispered. I turned, stepping off the porch with care. The wind picked up, needling my coat. My boots sank into the snow as I made my way toward the rental car, the gift bags swaying stiffly at my side. 10 minutes later, just as I closed the driver's door, a voice pierced the dark. "Nora, wait, please." There was a time when Serena wouldn't let go of my hand, even to sleep. Back when the world was just the two of us, me folding laundry at midnight, her in the hallway with a coloring book and a flashlight, because she couldn't sleep unless she was near me. After her father left, I made a promise she never heard out loud that she would never feel unwanted, not for a single day. I kept that promise even when it nearly broke me. When she was 7, I picked up a second job cleaning dental offices after my hospital shifts. I'd wash blood out of linens in the morning and polish waiting room furniture at night. There were weeks I lived on black coffee and soup crackers, so she could go to field trips and wear shoes that actually fit. I took her to school in scrubs, walked into parent meetings, smelling like disinfectant, and fell asleep during her ballet rehearsals, because my body had nothing left to give. She never complained. She used to tuck a note into my lunch. "You're my hero, Mommy." Crayon hearts around every word. And when she got the scholarship to Hawthorne Academy, the private middle school with the ivy and the uniform skirts, I cried in the parking lot, like it was the lottery. I thought maybe we'd made it. I should have noticed it earlier, how she stopped calling as often once she met Graham. How conversations became appointments. How she started saying, "I'll check with Evelyn more than I'll let you know." After the wedding, it was like I'd been put in a different category. Still labeled mom, but no longer essential. Invitations came less frequently, and when they did, they came carefully worded. "It's just a small dinner this year." Or Graham's family is doing something a little more formal. You know how they are. The kind of politeness that leaves no space for objection. When Miles was born, I offered to stay a week to help. She said thank you, then added Evelyn already arranged a nurse. She's very particular about routine. I sent swaddles I'd sewn myself, books we used to read together. No reply. I tried to understand. People change. Marriages create new families. But somewhere between baby showers I wasn't invited to and birthdays I was too far away to attend, I stopped being part of the inner circle. When I did visit, I was the guest, the one who didn't know where the forks were kept anymore. Still, every Christmas I sent something. A book, a letter, a hand-knit scarf. Something to say, I remember. something to say I'm still here. And then this year, for the first time in 3, a call came. Graham's voice, not hers. He said, "We'd like you to come. Miles misses you." So I came. And she opened the door and told me to leave. And now someone was chasing me through the snow. I didn't look up when I heard the footsteps in the snow. My hands stayed tight around the steering wheel, the keys still untouched in the ignition. I felt the cold before the knock on the window, a soft tap, hesitant. I knew that knock, but I didn't roll it down. Instead, I sat there staring at the dashboard, letting memory answer for me. The baby shower had been Serena's idea, but it was Evelyn who sent the invitations. She claimed it was a streamlined guest list, just a few friends, a few neighbors. I wasn't on it. I found out about it 2 weeks later through a Facebook photo. Serena glowing in blue chiffon, surrounded by pastel gifts and people I'd never met. I stared at that photo for hours, memorizing it the way I used to memorize her school pictures, hoping to catch something real behind the practiced smile. The first birthday party came after Miles turned 1. I had bought him a wooden train, set the kind that didn't light up or make noise but could last for generations. I wrapped it in brown paper, tied it with twine, and tucked a note inside. "To my little traveler go, wherever your heart takes you." When I arrived at the house, the pile of gifts under the tree was color-coded. Mine sat unopened the entire evening. At the end, I watched Evelyn quietly move it to a side table, like a stray item that didn't fit the decor. I offered to babysit once when Serena said she and Graham needed a break. She smiled that tight smile and said, "Evelyn's around most days, and she has better energy for children." Better energy, as though my presence might wear him down instead of build him up, as though I didn't raise a daughter through emergency rooms and eviction notices with nothing but love and grit. Each time I told myself there was a reason. Maybe she forgot. Maybe it wasn't her fault. Maybe she was just busy or tired or trying to manage too many worlds at once. But tonight, when she looked at me like a stranger and told me to go, I couldn't pretend anymore. The passenger door opened. A gust of cold followed him in. Graham sat down, breathless. His face flushed, his hands bare and red from the wind. "I didn't know she'd do that," he said quietly. The sound of the latch clicking into place was louder than it should have been. Like a gavel, like a line drawn in snow. I stood there a moment longer, still holding the bags, as if she might swing the door open again, laughing, saying she was joking. But the porch light blinked once, then steadied, casting my shadow long and thin across the yard. Nothing moved behind the frosted windows. The warmth I'd imagined that I'd carried with me across state lines didn't exist. Not for me. The first step off the porch was slow. The second nearly sent me down. I'd stepped wrong on a patch of ice, and the gifts jostled in my arms. I caught myself barely and kept going. With every step, my legs felt heavier, not from snow, but from the weight of believing too much for too long. When I reached the rental car, I couldn't bring myself to open the trunk. I placed the gifts in the passenger seat, each one suddenly absurd. Peppermint bark. A framed photo of Serena from her high school graduation I'd found in an old drawer and had reframed. I'd thought maybe she'd like to show Miles what she once looked like before time and distance turned us into separate people. I slid behind the wheel and shut the door. The cold followed me in. My hands trembled as I reached for the keys, but they slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. That's when the shaking started. Not from cold, but from the years I'd held myself together. 3 years of unanswered messages, of edited words, of biting down on disappointment and pretending to understand. The tears came without sound, just the rhythm of them sliding down my face as I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. My breath fogged the glass until the house disappeared from view. Then clear and desperate, my name rang out across the snow. Running footsteps hurried too light to be hers. Graham reached the car, breathless cheeks, bright from the cold, his dress shoes soaked through. He bent down toward the window, motioned gently. I hesitated, then rolled it down halfway. I didn't know he said. His voice shook, but not from the cold. "Nora, I swear to you I didn't know she'd say that." I didn't answer. I watched the fog from his breath rise and fade. "I invited you," he said. "It was my idea. I wanted Miles to see you. He asks about you all the time. I thought if you were here, even just for dinner, something might shift." I turned my face away toward the house, toward the glow I was still on the outside of. "She told me to leave, Graham. Not Evelyn. Not you. Serena did." With her own mouth. "I know," he said quietly, "but it's not that simple. She's not 5 anymore. She doesn't need someone to speak for her." He looked down at his hands. "Evelyn's had her claws in everything since we got married. How the nursery looked. How many guests at the christening. What school Miles should go to. She talks about you like," he paused, "like you're some story we don't tell anymore." "And Serena let her," I said. Graham met my eyes. "She's been trying so hard to be what Evelyn expects, what this town expects. It's taken something out of her. Something I used to love. I thought of Serena at 12, wild-haired and stubborn, defending a bee she found on the windowsill because she thought it was cold. That girl didn't need a script. I can't change her," he said. "No," I replied. "But she can choose to change herself." He stood there a moment longer. "Will you come back inside?" I reached for the keys. "Not like this." Graham stayed beside the car, arms crossed against the cold, trying to find the right words. I could feel his worry pressing in, like fog through a cracked window. "Please," he said again. "Miles keeps asking where Grandma Nora is. He's been standing at the window since you left." I looked down at the keys in my hand, then back at the house, now partially hidden by the steam on the windshield. If I step back in that house, I asked slowly, will she speak to me like I exist? Not just tolerate me, but see me. His silence was answer enough. I turned the ignition. The car sputtered to life. The heater clicked on, whirring low, warm air starting to fight the chill. He didn't move. "I'm not angry at you, Graham," I said. "You tried." He leaned down again, his voice lower now. "I thought if you came, something in her might break open." I gave him a tired smile. "She needs to do that herself. I won't beg my way into a room where I used to be the one who built the walls." He stepped back as I shifted the car into reverse. "Nora," he said softly, "where are you going?" "Not far," I replied. "Just not back." I drove past the glowing house, past the wreaths and lit windows and people I once knew. I took the turn toward the edge of town where the roads were quieter. I didn't go back to Boston. I wasn't ready for that kind of distance. Instead, I pulled into a gravel lot outside a small inn with a blue porch light and an empty parking space. Inside, the woman at the front desk didn't ask any questions. She handed me the key with both hands and said, "Breakfast's at 8. I didn't unpack. I just lay down fully clothed and stared at the ceiling until morning light reached the window. While I stared at the ceiling of the inn somewhere across town, the woman who used to be my little girl stood in her kitchen shaking. Serena had barely spoken since I left. Her mouth had gone dry, her hands tight around the edge of the sink. Dishes were piled from dinner, cranberry sauce congealed on fine china. Graham had tried to talk to her once Miles was in bed, but she brushed him off, retreating into motions, rinsing, wiping, stacking, until nothing was left to clean except herself. Then came the voice behind her. "Mom?" Miles said, rubbing his eyes from the hallway. "Why don't I have 2 grandmas?" She blinked. "You do, honey. You have Grandma Evelyn. But what about the other one?" he asked. "The one who brought me the train set. You said she couldn't come because she was busy, but she was here. I saw her at the window." Serena crouched down and pulled him close. "It's complicated," she whispered. He nodded, not understanding, then padded back to bed. Later that night, Pastor Thomas came by. He dropped off a tray of cookies from his wife, but lingered. He and my father had gone to school together. He baptized Serena in the old church with the green roof and the stained glass cross. He looked at her long and quiet, like someone who'd seen her at both 5 and 32. "Your mother used to sit with you all night when your seizures came. Never left the room. Not once. I remember because I stopped by, and she was sitting on the floor beside your crib, still in her scrubs, humming to you. I saw that love with my own eyes." Serena sank into a kitchen chair, tears silent, one hand over her mouth. "I pushed her out," she said. "Not because I hated her. I was ashamed of how different she was from Evelyn, of how people looked at her, of what that said about me. I thought if I kept her away, no one would ask about where I came from." Pastor Thomas didn't respond right away. He just pulled out a chair, sat beside her, and waited until her breathing calmed again. When she finally stood, she went to the guest room closet and pulled out a dusty box marked with my name. I woke before the sun, not because of any alarm, but because something in me wouldn't let me rest. The light in the room was soft gray with the weight of early winter. I sat at the small desk by the window and pulled out the notepad from the inn's drawer. The pen skipped a little on the paper, but the words came steadily. "Serena, I no longer expect a seat at your table. That part of me hopeful waiting has been quieted. But you'll always have a seat at mine. No conditions. No need to ask. If Miles ever wants to find me, I'll never turn him away. I will always be his grandmother, even if I'm no longer welcome in the picture frame. Love, Mom." I didn't read it twice. I folded the page carefully, slipped it into a plain envelope, and wrote her name on the front. Just her name. No to or from. By the time I reached the house, the sun had just broken over the treetops. Everything was still. I parked down the street, walked quietly along the sidewalk, and placed the envelope between the storm door and the wood just enough to keep it dry. The house looked peaceful. Lights off. Curtains drawn. I stood there a moment longer than I meant to, then turned and walked back to the car without looking back. I drove west, not to Boston yet, but toward a small town with a friend I hadn't seen in years. Someone who used to braid Serena's hair during Sunday school. I needed a place where I wasn't a burden or a symbol, just a person with a quiet ache and time to let it settle. I didn't know what she would do with the letter. I only knew it was no longer mine to carry. It was Christmas Eve again, and I hadn't planned anything more than tea and a book. I wasn't expecting anyone, which is why the knock at the door made me freeze. When I opened it, Serena stood there, eyes glassy, holding a pie with both hands, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Miles was beside her in a red sweater, his cheeks pink from the cold. She didn't speak at first. Her lips pressed together, her shoulders high with hesitation. Then softly she said, "You were right. I became someone I'm not proud of." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I just looked at her, at the woman in front of me, who looked so much like the girl I once rocked to sleep after too many hard nights. I saw it in her. Then the effort, the cost of walking up those stairs, the pie baked with shaky hands, and maybe too much cinnamon, the child bundled beside her, who didn't understand the weight of that visit. So I stepped aside. Miles slipped past her legs and into the hallway. "Grandma," he shouted, eyes wide with excitement. "Can I see your snow globe again? The one with the fox in the forest?" Serena stood in the doorway for a moment longer, then exhaled and followed him in. She set the pie down on the kitchen counter, like it belonged there, and I closed the door behind them. We sat at the kitchen table while Miles played in the next room, his laughter echoing softly against the walls. I poured tea without ceremony, sliding a cup toward her. She wrapped her hands around it, but didn't drink. "I should have come sooner," she said. "I've thought about it 100 times. I nodded, not needing to say I'd thought about it too. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. Not just for what I said at the door, but for the years before that. For the way I let you become invisible. I looked at her, then really looked. Her face had changed. Not just older, softer, heavier with understanding. The kind that only comes after you've broken something you didn't realize was fragile. You stopped being my little girl a long time ago, I said, quietly. But I never stopped being your mother. She nodded, tears slipping silently, and reached across the table. I took her hand. It was cold, but it didn't pull away. There was no grand speech. No dramatic release. Just the stillness of something once shut, beginning to open again. In the other room, Miles shook the snow globe, and a flurry of white swirled behind glass. Some betrayals don't come with shouting or slammed doors. They unfold in silence, in absences, in empty chairs where you once belonged. I spent years hoping for a word, a gesture, a place back at the table, but healing didn't begin when she knocked. It began the moment I stopped waiting to be chosen. We find peace not in rewriting the past, but in deciding what to carry forward. Have you ever stood on the outside of your own family? Would you walk back in if the door opened again? Or would you build something new, all your own?